Hey, this is YC, and I'm going to talk about a website that I did in 2014, which failed, that lasted about a year, and which I can't really talk about in explicit detail as to what it was, because basically I'm too embarrassed to really mention the niche and the name of the site, because it's sort of a weird idea that I had, and I tried it, and it lasted about a year and a half, not a year and a half, but maybe almost a year and a half, where I did this website, and then I did all this stuff for it, trying to make it work, but it didn't work. And it was part of my first wave of failed niche sites. Well, ultimately failed. I didn't think they were going to fail when I did it at the time, when I started it, but they did fail because they weren't very good. And essentially I just executed them poorly. So this story is kind of about that, this one site that, like, I had this other site, okay, that was an interracial erotic book site. And I have a video or a podcast thing that I made about that site, which talks about that site in some detail and why I did it, and why it didn't work, and what the site was about, that kind of thing. But this site's even weirder than that, and I came across this keyword, essentially, where I saw the keyword in this. How the hell did I find this keyword? It was in some other site. This is before I used, maybe it was when I first tried Ahrefs or SEMrush, but I don't even think so, because that was before I even used those tools. But there was some tool where I was looking at some site's keywords, like the keywords that was ranking some other site. And there was this list of keywords, and it was like this and this and all this stuff, whatever, sort of normal stuff that seemed, I think it was related to, oh shit, it's coming back to me. The site was related to, I don't know, some kind of lifestyle thing where it was just different lifestyles, I guess you could say. And I think, yeah. Okay, so without getting into it, it was like there was stuff like the furries, and there was stuff like that where it was just talking about, there's this group of people, and there's this fetish and all this stuff. And then I found this one keyword where it had this like huge keyword volume, and I'm like, whoa, what's that keyword? And I'm like, what the hell does that even mean? I looked at the keyword. I'm like, what is that? What is that? And I looked it up, and I honestly didn't know what it meant. And I looked it up, and it had this like, a lot of search traffic in the US. And I thought, okay, well, what the hell? So I looked it up, and I was like, okay, what the hell is this? So I had no idea about this, let's say, subculture. And I looked at this subculture, and I was just like, oh my God, like this is, and my friend was with me, and she was kind of, she was there when I, like, shortly after I kind of found it. I remember going to her house, and she was sort of doing some stuff with me at the time. We were working on some like social media stuff, and I kind of bounced it off her, and I was just like, what do you think of this niche? Because I'm doing these niche sites, right? And she's just like, yeah, okay. But she didn't really like understand the whole niche site thing, but she sort of got it enough to know that I was looking for topics that were kind of interesting and had some followings and stuff. So she was like, that's interesting. She had not heard of it either. And we both were just like, holy shit, like, what the fuck? It's not even that weird, to be honest, but but once you look at sort of the community or the subculture itself, and just sort of the pictures and everything, you're just like, whoa, like this is pretty interesting, just because it's something that, it has a lot of, how do I say this? Just very, you can't, it's hard to not like ignore it, I guess. You're just sort of like, wow, it's this thing that's very specific and has very specific look to it, I guess. And so we just thought it was like a riot. We were kind of like laughing, going like, holy shit, like that's so funny, just because it was, so out there, I guess, to us at the time. But just because also when you looked up we were like on Tumblr, like looking at the profiles of people that were in this subculture that had these Tumblr profiles, and it was just like, cheapers creepers here. Like, what the fuck is this shit? And then just, so you might get an idea of what we're talking about, but I'm not going to give it away because I'm still a little embarrassed, because then what happened was I was like, I'm just going to make a site about this niche and just like to dive into it, even though I'm not part of this community and I don't even really know what the hell this is. I'm gonna niche into it and basically just start researching it. Like that's how you do it. You basically like find a niche, and if it seems copacetic to profit and traffic and everything, you just sort of dive in and you just start researching it. So 2014 I start researching this niche. I'm like, I need to come up with a name for the site. So I came up with this name for the site, and I'm just like, lol, this is such a funny name. These people, well, I shouldn't put it like that. These people, it's just like this group of people that I was sort of, you could say like that I was taking advantage of it. But the thing is, I actually was researching this group, and I wasn't trying to patronize them in any way. I just thought that the name of the site was funny because because that's the type of thing this was. It's very, it's got a bit of a sense of humor to it. So I just thought, I have this silly name for the site, and I'll name it that. And then basically the thing is, that's sort of me now. I have to represent, because I am representing this niche now. So I have to come up with a kind of a persona. So I came up with this persona to go along with this niche, and I was just like, that's a funny persona. I'm just going to be this person, and went along with it for a bit. So I basically I made all these, well, I didn't have to do anything, but I just made all these social profiles, and because that's another thing you do. Basically, you just sort of go and you make a Pinterest, and you make a Tumblr, and you make a Google Plus, and you make a, did I make a Facebook? I might have. I don't remember. But then and then like maybe an Instagram or something. Anyway, so I had like a ton of social profiles that I was just like, I'm this guy. And so then I kind of basically, what I did was fabricated this sort of persona and this sort of thing to make this site, and then basically had to make the site. So I'm like, what's the point? Like, what is the angle of this site? Because this subculture was not necessarily a subculture that had a specific thing that they were after, I guess, other than being in that subculture. So, take furries, for example. I guess they might want like big furry animal suits or something. So I couldn't immediately think of the thing that these people, shouldn't say these people, but like, these people, they're people. These people wanted that would be something that was niche friendly. So I thought, what the hell do these people want? And I started like watching more videos and stuff. And then I was like, oh, fuck. Okay. I think I know what they want. They want this, and they want this, and they want this. And there were just these things that were, that definitely could be monetized at some point. So I'm like, well, if this is the thing that these people are into, then I'm going to talk about these things. So I basically built this like lifestyle site around this niche, and was just sort of involved in it for like about a year, sort of building it out like a normal niche site, except it wasn't normal because the topics were all specific to the subculture that I was involved in, I guess. But the thing is, I wasn't actually involved in the subculture. Like I don't even really qualify as someone who could be in the subculture, if that makes any sense. Because I just like, that's just not me. So no like disrespect to the subculture that I'm referring to, but essentially I'm like, well, I'm not really in this subculture. So what business do I have writing about this subculture? But the thing is, the interesting thing to me is that I basically became interested in the subculture in a way where I'm like, this actually seems like a pretty fun subculture, or just whatever culture. So I basically was sort of sucked into it just to see, like, kind of like an observer, just being like, what do these people do? Like, how do they, behave, and what do they do, and what are they into? So I basically like just was sort of snooping around and basically finding things that I thought they were into. So basically I had to kind of become that that persona of that subculture in a way, but only in my own mind, right? Like, and so the posts were all about that subculture, and so everything was geared to that subculture, or so I thought. But yeah, that was the first time I got sort of like threatened with being sued for something because I used a picture of something that someone didn't want me to use. And that was like, because I'd wondered that if I could just use pictures off the internet and get in trouble for them or not. But basically, like, that's the thing, is my answer to that is that you can use all sorts of pictures from the internet, because basically everyone's using all these pictures and no one seems to be keeping track of it. So it's sort of a free for all with pictures, except it's not really, because sometimes people like photographers and those types of people have a problem with you using their images, especially if they have them watermarked and whatnot. So I used this one image of this person, and their manager called me because I didn't realize, but they were like an actor or something. And then the manager called me from Florida and was just like, take that picture down, because my client doesn't want to be associated with that thing that you're associating them with. And I was just like, oh shit. Okay. So I took it down, and then basically that manager was still mad at me, being like, we're going to sue you. And I was like, why? I took it down, like, calm down. And then the manager guy was like, well, there's still more pictures on the site of that thing, of that representation that this person was not pleased with. So I basically took everything down that was associated with that person, and then they left me alone. But yeah, they were not pleased, and I was getting calls from this manager. Aside from that, though, the site was going pretty well, and I thought it was developing nicely, and I was learning all sorts of interesting things. So that's the thing, you learn things as you do these sites, right? It's a learning experience regardless, but this was a particularly steep learning curve, I guess, for me, because I just had no idea about the subculture before. And then I had to do things sort of like when I was trying to monetize it, where I was getting into these sort of ideas of how I could monetize the site, and they were like very different to me. And I thought, well, can I do this even? Like, is this something I can even do? And of course you can do whatever you want to do. So I just was sort of touching base with these different affiliate programs that were maybe not the ideal programs. It kind of got me aware of some different programs aside from Amazon, though, because this wasn't really an Amazon friendly site, let's say. I don't think Amazon was had too much stuff to offer this site. So I was just trying to find other ways to monetize it. And I thought, oh, this is a good one. But I wasn't used to, or I had no experience with those programs. And I really didn't know much about like alternate programs to Amazon at that point, because I was so immersed in Amazon that I just thought, well, if it's not an Amazon thing, then I can't really like do it. But that's definitely not the case anymore. But at the same time, I wasn't very experienced at the time with those other programs. And I kind of like, it kind of was good in that sense that I basically, learned about some different programs at least. But that was still, none of that really helped the site to thrive or anything, because the site basically just kind of grew, but the problem was that I didn't really have a very good attachment to the niche. I was just sort of like an onlooker / basically just researching it and learning about it and trying to relate to it, but it wasn't really like my thing at all. So I basically, eventually my like Steam, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty like, stubborn / if I want to do something like that, I'll just power through it and make it work, and I'm going to make it work, and wasn't going to give up, and I'm not giving up. And then eventually I just gave up, because I just thought, well, you know what? I mean, I think that was the one where, I put almost like the most work into it, because I guess compared to the other sites, so the interracial erotic book site was mostly e-commerce, in the sense of like, I wasn't writing as much of the content as it was being ported over from Amazon or wherever it was coming from. I was just sort of dumping content onto my site. And then same with the comic site. It was very much like the Amazon plugin was doing most of the work, and I was blogging a bit, but it wasn't like my blog was still pretty small relative to the number of posts. Cause like I said in that video that there was, like 1,000 Amazon products that were pumping onto the site all the time. Just like every day there was tons more. But yeah, and then the cellulite site basically was somewhat of a small blog too, because it was harder to get into the health related things are very almost scientific in a way that you have to like understand things of like cellulite on the surface. You're just thinking about like weight loss and fat and stuff like that. But when you get into the whole science of cellulite, it's like not a joke, and you basically have to like buckle down and learn some like heavy duty science around weight loss, which I wasn't prepared for at the time. I was just like, yes, eat or drink a spinach smoothie. And so, which is in itself isn't a bad idea. But with this site, I basically was like I had like these ideas for content. There was just all this potential content, and also the payout on the things that I was trying to monetize it with were like huge. So I thought, if I can just get this content to click and actually basically, work, then once I have like a fan base, I can really monetize the shit out of this site. But the problem was that I wasn't really well versed in analytics software or Google Analytics at least, and was unable to really understand the traffic at that point. I was using like the WordPress stuff, I guess, and I just didn't understand. Yeah, I kind of remember the WordPress analytics a bit better now, and it was just, I was like, is this my traffic? I guess so. So I guess I'm doing okay. There's some people looking at this, and there seems to be more. But anyways, so the point is that I was sort of clinging to this idea of big money, but the content was getting less easy for me to make because it was getting like real. I was like not really just having fun learning about this. It wasn't like after about 8 months of studying this niche, it was like basically you're part of that world, and you have to just get real and be responsible to what that subculture was after. And I just stopped caring, which again, it didn't really affect anyone. The thing about this story that makes it almost okay to reveal what this was is that I didn't have any specific, prejudices against the subculture. Like the subculture was kind of wacky to me, but it wasn't something that I thought was too, I didn't think it was bad or anything. I just wasn't really part of it. So when I tried to become part of it, it became difficult because I wasn't really part of it. So therefore, becoming actually integrated into that culture required me to actually almost do things that I wasn't going to do. I just thought, well, this isn't exactly like some other niches where you can just buy the thing, or you can just try this and it's easy and there you get into it that way. But it's more like you have to really understand this culture and represent it. And I thought, that's actually not going to happen. I can't do that. But I still had like a lot of content on the site that was pretty interesting, and I thought it was useful, and I thought it was somewhat well written because I actually researched it and had something to say about it. Because even though I wasn't really, an insider of the culture, I was still decently researching the topics that I was into. So I had recommendations for things that I thought were decent and everything. But at the end of the day, I basically thought, well, because what happened was essentially HostGator was shitty at the time. I don't really want to slam them too much, but I guess I will because who gives a fuck. But they were just, the customer service sucked, and like things were going wrong, and my sites were basically slowing down, and because I just had some like shared server action kind of thing, and it was not enough to sustain my sites for a long period of time. They were just getting slower and more more ineffective. And I just was trying to talk to HostGator and understand the problem, and I just couldn't really get a hold of them. It was a lot of being on hold a lot and just taking forever. And then someone would pop on and be like, kind of not have a lot of patience, because I was trying to understand this whole hosting thing. And I had a lot of questions because it was new to me. And these hosting people were like total minimum wage drones that didn't really want to sit there and hash things out with me, because I was thinking, like, had all these questions, and they were just like, oh, it's this fucking guy again. What does he want now? And I'm like, well, my sites don't work. I need your help. And they would say like, oh, like, and eventually it got to the point where I think there was one guy where he was telling me about the inodes and saying, you're out of room, dude. Like, just why don't you just get the fuck off? Like, he literally told me, like, I think I had some correspondence with him, and I was just like, this happened and this is going wrong, and et cetera, et cetera. And he's eventually just like, just get off HostGator. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, get off this platform. Like, get off this hosting platform. It doesn't seem to work for you. And I thought, well, what do I do? Do I have to migrate? Isn't migration like a big deal? And that takes forever and whatever. And he was just saying, well, I mean, you can go and delete those inodes, or he's like, I'm sorry your experience with us sucks, but your sites are, complicated enough to make the hosting not, it's not serving you properly. And I thought like, well, yeah, I just had to think about it for a minute. And I thought, these sites, maybe I'll just delete them. And I think he was just like, what the fuck? What are you talking about? Just move them, or, just because I was basically making him do too much work. And then he was frustrated because I kept asking questions, and I had like his name as far as customer service, and I was sort of bugging him a lot. And he was saying, I don't know what to do for you. Like, just fuck off. Like, leave me alone. And I was like, I'm not leaving you alone. I have to figure this out. And eventually he just said, like, migrate somewhere else. Just take your sites off, or like take one of them down, or delete them or something. Like, do something. And I just thought, like, it was late at night, and I think they had like 24-hour service at the time. I don't know if they still do, but I just thought, well, these sites actually aren't even that important. Like, they're not even that good. Like, why am I saving them? What was the point of this? And then eventually I just sort of broke down, because I remember at the time I was telling people about this and talking about my sites all the time, and people are just like, what are you talking about? Like, what the fuck's wrong with you? And I'm just like, my sites, oh my God. And then it just was annoying. Like, this is annoying me right now just to talk about it. But eventually I just trashed them. I just thought, fuck it, these sites are fucking ridiculous. And I think he said, don't you want to back them up or something? I'm like, no, just delete them right now, and delete my account, and fucking like delete everything by. And then he did delete the account, and I thought, there goes my sites essentially. But the next day I thought, well, I wasn't making any money, so basically there was no reason not to delete them, except for the fact that I was gonna have to keep working on them. So it's almost like you're in a bad relationship and you just leave. And that was actually something that I knew something about in my life, that the sort of like the clean break kind of thing with relationships. And I thought, if you can walk out of a relationship like that, you can just delete a site, because these sites are not really me, and I can't really even identify with them that much. They're just a lot of work, and it would be nice to start again. And then so I did that, and then I remember the next day I just was like, I guess they're gone, and I can just start again now. So that was the end of that site, and all those other sites. That was like 5 of them. So so I managed to do that whole rant without revealing what I was talking about, I think. So if you have a theory of what I was talking about and which niche I was actually referring to, then leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your guess.